We are 2 minutes away. We got 4 minutes, so we made it just in time. Good thing I left when I did, because I didn't want to miss this tour. I think this tour is going to be better. Wow, what a beautiful park. That's the station, and there's the guy, the 100 umbrella. I could tell this tour is going to be way better than the KGB museum. Great tour guide explaining how Hitler took over Czechoslovakia. By the way, Czechoslovakia was, the idea of it was formed in Pittsburgh, United States, by Czechs and Slovaks that wanted to create a new country from Bohemia. 1938, Hitler took part of Czechoslovakia. There was a Munich agreement with the Allies. Neville Chamberlain says that he had peace in our time. But then Hitler marched on and took over the rest of the country. The Czech president told the soldiers to stand down. So that statue of a lion is a modern statue they built to honor the Czechoslovakian pilots during World War II. The most famous one was in the 303 squadron. He shot down like 17 airplanes. There's a movie called Hurricane 303. I think Hurricane is the name of the airplane. He also talked about Erich Hartmann, German pilot. He's the greatest ace. 350, over 350 planes shot down. The Russians captured him, imprisoned him, but in the end he was acquitted of all charges, so he's an innocent man. So this was a memorial to the second Czechoslovakian resistance. David Cherney had the opportunity to create the monument, but he refused because he didn't like the communists. So his name's pronounced David Cherney, not David Cerny. David Cherney, he became famous in 1990 because he painted a Soviet tank pink. He got arrested, he got released, and then he painted it pink again. He did it like 3 times. And now the tank is still pink, sitting in a museum. The guy said that there is a David Cherney museum here, I think. I'm gonna look it up. The Charles Bridge is over there. So we're entering the Jewish quarter, and the Jews of Prague were gathered up and put into the concentration camp Terezin. It's a castle, and I think like 300,000 Jews died. They weren't exterminated through gas chamber. They were killed because of malnutrition. So he told a story about the Red Cross wanting to visit the concentration camp, and they gave the Nazis forewarning of when they're going to come and visit. So the Nazis cleaned the place up. The Red Cross representatives came and saw nothing that was egregious. So they reported back that everything's fine, and they even made a movie out of it.
Stumble upon them, and then we read what they say. The idea started in Cove.
Okay, those are stumbling stones That's the name of the Jewish person that were taken away to concentration camp, which extermination camp that they were taken to, and how and when they died. There's over 700,000 of them around Europe. It's called stumbling stones because you're meant to trip over them, and when you do, you bow down to see who this person was or what made you stumble. Prague was almost destroyed by the German army during World War II. They were coming towards Prague because of the Russians coming from the east, north, and the south. And Prague announcer announced for help in Czech and German and English language. And the help came from the Russian Liberation Army, which was actually part of the German army. They were made up of Ukrainians and others, and they saw it as an opportunity, and they came. They defended the city, and the city was saved, even though parts of it was destroyed, like the astronomical clock was like half destroyed. They had to replace the parts. In the end, leaders of the Russian Liberation Army was captured by the Russians because they committed war crimes, and they were tried and executed. And in the Czech Republic, the Russian Liberation Army is considered to be heroes. In Poland, they are considered to be war criminals because they did war crimes. And after the war, a lot of the Czech people, they did crimes. They committed crimes against the German people in Sudetenland. They kicked out the Germans in Sudetenland. They put the Germans into the concentration camps. So they didn't learn. They didn't learn from what happened in World War II. After World War II, they committed war crimes against Germans. They even beat some of them to death. And in the Sudetenland, which was populated with Germany or German people, now there is virtually no German people there. So fascinating history. So that toy with a red button nose or red nose, that was a substitute for Mickey Mouse because Mickey Mouse was not allowed in communist Czechoslovakia. So he mentioned multiple phases of communism. 1950s, they prosecuted people, executed them, imprisoned them. The most famous case was Milada, and they made a movie about her in English. She was fighting against the Nazis, but she was accused of helping the United States. Then in 1968, there was the Prague Spring, where there was a little bit of freedom for about a month or two, and then the Warsaw Pact armies came from Russia, in Poland, and several others. They were here to liberate the country. And you know, the Czech people, they were like angry, and some kids, they lit themselves on fire.
Oh, coffee shop?
They committed suicide by lighting themselves on fire. The first person to do it, he called himself Torch Number 1. Nothing happened. Nobody, you know, fought against the Warsaw Pact army, so another young kid lit himself and called himself Torch Number 2. But he said that during communism there was no poverty. Everybody got what they needed. So there were positives and negatives. I think mostly negatives though.
So, for the picture, back to the tank invasion, I'm going to show you this picture so you can have it positioned perfectly where the man was, right?
Right here.
Right in the middle, and the National Museum. Yeah? See that?
The first start. That's the start date of the Velvet Revolution. It's called the Velvet Revolution because, like velvet, it was soft. Like velvet, nobody got killed. 250,000 people protested in that square we just saw in front of that National Museum. And it was started by a bunch of students 50 years after the day that a student died protesting against the Nazis. So 50 years later, students started protesting about communism, grew to 250,000 people, and that was the end of communism. So that guy's name's Havel, that's his last name. He's famous for helping to end communism. He first protested against a bunch of rock and roll bands being in prison for no reason. I think the band was called the Plastic People of the Universe. Happened in 1977 or something, 76. And he demanded that they be released. Havel was put in prison, offered asylum in the US. He refused. And in 1998, when the revolution was starting, people were chanting his name because they wanted him to be president. He became the president, last president of the Czechoslovakia and the first president of the Czech Republic. And he delivered a speech in front of all those crowds by just raising his hand in the peace gesture. Apparently that peace gesture came from the Czech Republic. It means resistance as well as peace. That's the dancing house.
I don't think I have
Left of the picture. His name was Reinhard Heydrich. If you come.
Okay, that's the end of the tour. That was a great tour. Definitely better than the KGB museum. A lot more information. The guy's name was Nicholas from 100 Spires, and it started raining like crazy. Last part was about Anthropoid, where Czech paratroopers murdered Heydrich. Heydrich was the architect of the final solution. The Czech paratroopers landed in December 1941, murdered Heydrich. May 1942, they were betrayed by a traitor. They were hiding in this church. And they were found because of a traitor and murdered in June 1942. So the way the assassination of Heydrich went was that Heydrich always took the same route into Prague. He was the head of this whole region, and Himmler warned him about not taking the same route. Something bad's gonna happen. Heydrich said, no, nothing bad's gonna happen. Also, you know what? Actually, this is the one. This is a church where the paratroopers were murdered. From this church, they were hiding here. So this is a church where the paratroopers were killed by a traitor, and the operation is called Operation Anthropoid. So basically, these paratroopers were trained to kill Heydrich, the architect of the final solution. He's the guy who decided to create all these death camps. Heydrich was put in place of the Prague area, this whole region, as a Nazi leader. They figured out he was taking the same route every time to come to Prague from his castle or his country home. So they figured out exactly where to murder him. The two paratroopers were waiting there, and at the spot where there's a sharp turn and where the car has to slow down or stop, one of the paratroopers took out his submachine gun, tried to shoot him, and it jammed. He threw the machine gun at the window, broke the window, and then the second paratrooper, he threw anti-tank grenade at Heydrich's car. wounded Heydrich. A little bit of horsehair from the car seat went inside the spleen, and that's what killed him. The paratroopers escaped. They were hiding in that church until they were betrayed. And they were in June. So May is when they killed Heydrich, and in June, that's when they were found out and killed as well. Operation Anthropoid, it was a movie. I saw the movie, it's a great movie. And he also mentioned another movie, Operation Daybreak or something. And that's done in like the 70s or 80s, it's black and white. Okay, I gotta find my place, how to get directions to go home or go to the hotel. Alright, that was a good burger, good beer. Heading back to the hotel.